Welcome, fans. We're back with episode number 3 of Brad Anderson's Old School Family Legacy podcast. We're talking today about, the very, when you talk about factions in pro wrestling, you can't not start with the Four Horsemen. We're going to get into all things Four Horsemen today, in addition to some other commentary on aspects of the Horsemen that you may not be aware of from the perspective of my co-host and namesake for this show, Mr. Brad Anderson. Brad, welcome once again to your show.
Thank you very much, man. I look forward to this. I think about these. I was just talking about how wonderful the experience has been talking with you about all these past that we love, and we want to keep alive. So thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. That's history is so important. It sometimes the history of the business is maligned in terms of current day and present product, but it's really, really important, I think, to document all the tremendous business that was done in the past. And again, I think for me personally, it begins and almost ends in terms of factions with the Four Horsemen. But before we get into that, I think it would be apropos to mention how we've just passed the 34-year anniversary of the passing of your dad, the legendary Gene Anderson. And I know the cooker Bob Cook had a nice post on social media about what Gene meant to him. It doesn't get any easier, does it?
No, I mean, and it was such an odd day, Halloween, and so I know after that had happened, I would when I had boys, we would over decorate and stuff just because I would try to keep my mind away from that was the fact of the day. Cause like Dad died at 5 years old. I mean, I remember him walking out the door that morning for some strange reason. I was awake before 7. I mean, I was 21, most 21s aren't awake then. And he had his sheriff's uniform. And I remember him walking out the door, and that was the last I ever saw. I don't remember if he even said goodbye. So I always say that to just like, man, tell your loved ones, you never know when the last time is you're going to see them. And the night before, I had just been down in Atlanta, and they were, I think they had just done Halloween Havoc, and I had a Halloween Havoc shirt. And Dad loved to I didn't get it because I was so young. He would love to get those shirts. I would bring them back, and he would take them to his new career of being a deputy sheriff. And I mean, guess to kind of just show the people, hey, this is what I used to be a part of or whatever. And I kind of remember arguing with him a little bit about, I wanted the shirt, I was being a bratty ass kid. And I finally just tossed it to him, and man, that's just not the last thing I want to ever happen, but it is what it is. He was a great dad and hard as hell at times, but he taught me how to be a man.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And that's generally what the folks that worked with and around your dad said. Definitely a man's man, tough as nails, but a great human being as well. So rest in peace, Gene. In terms of the Four Horsemen, I think it's worth and I direct the audience to the first couple episodes that we did on the Wrecking Crew. That there really wouldn't be a Four Horsemen per se without the Wrecking Crew. Do you concur with that, Brad?
Oh, I agree totally. I mean, I get to this day, people still get my dad confused with Ole when the most people remember the Four Horsemen in this generation more so than they would the Minnesota Wrecking Crew. And they're like, oh, yeah, I remember your dad. He was in the Four Horsemen. And that just, again, it shows how closely aligned it became. It went from that to the Four Horsemen. And people, they think my dad was in the Four Horsemen and, obviously had retired and from the business by that point. But yeah, it was something else the way that thing exploded. But definitely when you had Lars, Dad, and Ole together, that was like, I mean, I was a kid then, but you didn't really see that type of group that worked in tandem, like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there were other factions per se, but really the template for all those that followed was started by the Four Horsemen. We'll talk about what made them special in quite a few ways, but I wanted to show you my most prized piece of wrestling memorabilia. I don't know whether you can catch it all in the camera, but this is,
oh my gosh, the what is it? Was that not the Four Horsemen jacket? Like the knot? Was it? Not only was like nylon or the like shiny
satin.
satin.
Satin, yeah,
I'm looking.
autographed by Ric Flair. There in the middle, you can see it's faded quite a bit, but this is an original Jim Crockett Promotions
Oh my!
satin jacket that I got back in the day, and can't believe I fit into it, but I did in high school. My most prized possession. Not many of these around apparently, but yeah,
Oh,
this was one of the few items that I successfully was able to order from Jim Crockett Promotions up in Canada. We didn't really get a lot of luck with that.
like 86s, 87, something like that.
This is 86. Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
That's
So in terms of the marketing aspect of the Horsemen, you were a fan then, and also around the business, which we'll talk about in a future episode. Do you remember when the Four Horsemen became so successful, or started to get so successful, that merchandise came about, and who could forget the famous Four Horsemen vitamins? That was one of the few couple of attempts that Crockett made at merchandising. Do you remember all that stuff?
Yes, Dad brought them home, and I think they actually ended up doing a chemical analysis on them, and they were like sugar. They were not vitamins. I remember hearing the scientific, I was like, oh, but I do remember those. Yeah, Dad brought them. Anything that he would bring home, t-shirt, all that stuff. I didn't get one of those great jackets you have, but yeah, I do remember those. The trading cards, and it all. But they were always a step behind with WWE with their marketing. I mean, Vince, I guess, was there, but he's a friggin' genius. But they were always a step behind. But they were over and did sell merch, but nothing to the extent, obviously, that was happening in WWE.
Mm-hmm. In speaking of the group, the formation really occurred in 1985 with what Arn has talked about as a random promo where they were tight for TV time and needed to cut a series of promos, and Arn, as the legend goes, stuck up his four fingers and said, you'd be, and I'm paraphrasing, hard pressed to find a group of individuals more responsible for devastation than the Four Horsemen. And the original members there, you've got Arn, of course, Tully Blanchard, J.J. Dillon, Ole, and Ric Flair. That really set the group apart right off the start, because the world champion, or the more often than not world champion, was in the faction. And of course, you had that familial storyline. Looking back to that, do you think that was fortuitous or planned, that the world champion would be the underpinning as well of the faction?
I think it came together. I don't think there was an original plan. It was like one of those things. It's kind of like, I mean, you hear it in the WWE, or at least in the back in the Attitude Era, when they would send someone out, and like the next week they would look at, or the posters, if there's the posters of The Rock, hey, this kid's getting over. They don't really, you react to what's happening. And I don't believe, from what I was still a mark then. So what I was hearing was, being at the Crockett office and hearing from my dad. I just got in the office a lot. I talked about on interview day, and hearing bits and pieces. And I guess they just rode the wave for a while until they're like, hey man, this is going somewhere. And then they, I guess, put it together. But it was also the first time in the South you really started seeing heel fans. I had never seen heel fans in the South. I mean, I'd been up north, actually, even in Buffalo. I was a kid, and my dad, when he was a manager, and he had Anderson's Army, and he had like the Sheik, Snuka, Ray Stevens. I remember seeing heel fans there, and I was like blown out of the water that people were cheering from the bad guys, because down in the South back then, that was like, no. But you'd see the guys in the studio on Saturday morning wearing their suits, doing yeah. And I've seen that video with Arn. I think that's legit. It's spurred one thing into another, is how they got smart with it. And it was just so big that they could have done nothing wrong. I think at that point they were getting so over.
Mm-hmm. And one of the ways that the Four Horsemen started to get traction was in the wrestling magazines, the After mags, if you will. Here's an early story on them. And when you look at the fact that you had a unique group over and above Ric Flair being in the title picture, but what an elite level of workers in Blanchard, Anderson, and Ole, of course, and that set them apart right off the bat, as well. As Arn used to say, there wasn't a weak link in that original lineup. What in terms of the quality of the workers there in the Horsemen, aside from Flair, that was something special to have guys that were holding titles themselves, and we'll get into that, some of the dissension that created, but guys holding good enough to hold titles themselves in a faction made them a very powerful force, correct?
I mean, absolutely. And they were such good workers. And you look at Tully Blanchard, today's wrestler, if he walked in for a tryout, they might, I don't mean this bad to it, just they didn't have even Arn. I mean, he was a big guy, but they're not the chiseled wrestlers. And so their working ability, and I remember I've read like most all those guys' books, like Dusty and everything. And, whenever business started falling off, Dusty would work with Tully again, because Tully knew how to get the heat on them. I mean, it was just an unbelievable generation, not even beyond that, generational timing of a group of guys that got together, and it just made something that transcended into the future today, and still is copied.
Absolutely. How important was it that Flair was the charismatic leader? That larger than life persona, and definitely one of the top promos of all time, and some of the best TV in that era was just the promos with Schiavone putting over the Horsemen, putting over that lavish lifestyle, and that really cemented that status as arrogant elite heels. Do you think the group would have been anywhere near as successful without the world champion, and specifically Ric Flair in the epicenter?
I don't think the group would have been as good without anybody in that original lineup, honestly, because it was like every one of them, if there was a weakness in one, somebody else made up for it. You had like Ole and Arn. Arn was they could do their talking on the mic, but they were more, you relied on them as the enforcer. Tully just knew how to get heat like crazy with, I don't want to call it cheap heat, because that's not, but like the heat that people don't know how to get, just the little thing stomping on his finger while he's trying to get up. And then of course Flair, so I think it was just a culmination of everybody. Would it have been great still with missing somebody? Probably, but those guys, everything just mixed. And I'm kind of jumping ahead, but Barry Windham was the next best fit, in my opinion, for that, I think Lex was like a fish out of water in that group, if you ask me. I love Lex. But yeah, the original, I think they would have still been great, again, to answer the question, but nothing without each one of those people individually.
Mm. And I think the role of this man right here as the manager, JJ Dillon, really, man, his presence as the mouthpiece and the strategist really got. I think JJ had a big role in getting that heat uh, and giving the organization the strength and the credibility that it had, because Dillon, I know some folks say that he wasn't the most charismatic or whatnot, but really, I think he was the perfect manager for the Horsemen, and definitely, one of the key pieces to their success. What are your thoughts on JJ? Not the most, not a Jimmy Hart with the megaphone or more flamboyant managers, but man, when he talked, people would listen.
Okay, I'm going to answer that question, but I have to start it off with a fact that I never knew till, I can't remember, early 2000s. So JJ came up to me, and you may or may not know this, an interesting wrestling fact. JJ Dillon's first match ever in his wrestling career was against my father in the Park Center in Charlotte, North Carolina. There's actually a picture of it. I don't know if I still have it. It's black and white, but I remember JJ coming up and telling me that. And I just thought how ironic or coincidental it was that later on, Dad and Ole and, that faction of the Minnesota Red Crew, JJ ended up being the leader of that group, with having us. It's an interesting little fact. But I take JJ's role in that as kind of like the horror movie that less is more sometimes. You don't have to expose everything and be loud, and it's like that wonderment in your what's he doing behind the scenes. He's quiet, he's always manipulating. The people are thinking, this is my perception of, he's planning their next strategy to make their next step instead of just mouthing off. So I thought it worked great. Yeah, he didn't talk a lot, and what he did, like you said, people listened. So that's kind of my take on, like, less is more, like in that horror movie kind of thing. If people can relate, it's like you don't get to see it exactly, but something's going on.
Mm-hmm. I think he was underrated in many respects. That shoe that he would brandish and use in matches to get advantages was a great device. And you probably saw the acting that he did in terms of the vignette when Flair was going to have Precious over for one night, and he was there with the champagne and everything, being a smarmy character. Do you remember that vignette when Garvin showed up as Precious and knocked Flair out? Ron
Garvin, and he dressed up in the Yes, vaguely. I do remember that. I was like in the 11th grade, and I kind of remember that, honestly. But to be more honest, I remember less than more. So remember, I'll kind of abstain from. I don't know if I have an answer for you on that one, but I do kind of remember it.
Yeah, in addition to that, I thought the Horsemen were the personification of businessmen, and that evil corporate America greed, and they weren't afraid to flaunt it. And I think JJ was excellent in that role as well. One other aspect of the original membership, we talked about Tully and how fantastic he was too, but Arn carried the TV belt, and he was always a great talker in his own right, but contributed that that kind of he was called the enforcer for a reason, that burly presence to the group, tagged with Ole, of course, a lot. What do you think Arn brought to the table there that was unique?
Well, first of all, his interviews, you believed him. He was great. It was unique, and they were, I mean, profound, maybe a little. I mean, there was a lot of thought. He didn't just get up there and start screaming and hollering. I mean, he told a story in his interviews. I mean, and then he backed it up in the ring. That spine buster, or the gourd, and like out of nowhere, things aren't going their way, and then boom, Arn would do a power move and set the course straight. So, I mean, I think if Ole had stayed, I know Arn took on that role. Ole was dated at that age, but he got a lot of that from Ole, on how to work like that and keeping your feet in the ring, not moving, not taking a bump when you don't need to, and how to strike right when you need to. But I think a lot of that mentorship came from Ole, and I don't think he would disagree. Again, this is my belief and not his words, but you see so much after growing up and seeing what Dad and Ole did, and then the transition into Arn, and he replicated a lot of that attitude more than anything.
Mm-hmm. When you're talking about the Horsemen, you can't not mention their tremendous opponents, and although they've had a few programs like against Ole when he was kicked out, Luger, Road Warriors, blah blah blah. I think we got to really talk about Dusty Rhodes, and it seemed that whenever there was a big event or whatnot, it was Dusty against the Horsemen. Ric Flair, of course, they traded the belt a couple of times, but how important was, they say you can't have a great baby face without tremendous heels, but how important was Dusty to really getting the Horsemen as vilified as they became?
That exactly what you said, because Dusty was just, I mean, I watch videos from the old days all the time, still on little clips, reels, TikTok, whatever. And, as more and more I watch, I'm like, man, he just knew how to friggin' do it, man. I mean, he could get anything over himself, but I mean, his in the ring, everybody knows when Vince hired him and put him in the polka dots, it was a rip. I mean, and he got that shit over. I mean, and so yeah, he made them pop. And so you had the best heels in the business with one of the, if not the top baby face that, in the South, it's blue collar, man. That's what the fans are. And they could identify with the son of a plumber or whatever else he said he was.
Common man.
So, it was just perfect timing, perfect storm at that time, happens I remember Dad always telling me wrestling's a carousel, it has its ups and downs in the business of years, and that was obviously an uptime with what was happening. It went down in the early 90s and came back in the late 90s, but it was just a perfect storm, I guess, if you want to put it that way, of great heels and great baby faces.
Mm-hmm. One of the you talk about WWF being on the cutting edge with vignettes or whatnot. One stands out with respect to the Four Horsemen, and that was the devious parking lot attack, where Dusty, the Horseman, followed Dusty, or sorry, we're in JJ's vehicle, pulled up to the television area, and then attacked Dusty and broke his arm, I think it was, with a baseball bat, or wrist. And of course Arn was there, and Ole being Ole, with the great ad-libbed commentary. Do you remember that vignette by any chance?
Yes, I watch it and I wonder, it was so over back then, but I wonder now how that would be taken, just from cinematography and everything. But and I love watching it because I've been to that office so many times as a kid. That was the main office. Early 80s, they moved that office for a couple years for some reason, but kept that building and ended up going back to it. But like they were going down South Boulevard in Charlotte. I remember seeing a Lionel toy where I remember going there, and the whole thing was just like, this is my backyard, you know. But I do remember that completely. I remember seeing my dad's car in the parking lot when they pulled in, and all the you know, people who were there for business for the day. And that side entrance, that was the boys' entrance. I mean, that you didn't go in and out that door unless you were one of the boys. I mean, my dad even told me, you go to the front, you don't go through the side. That was, that for whatever reason, was the kayfabe door. But yeah, I remember seeing that, and again, I wonder how it would hold up. But I mean, it was great at the time. It was, it got some heat.
Yeah, and you know, I think it was so violent. Let's face it, as Arn said in one of the interviews that I've seen talking about it, it was a criminal. It was a
Yeah,
criminal assault with a weapon deal, and controversial. But they explained it that JJ had bought the time. That's why they showed it, and Dusty didn't want to go to the authorities. They just wanted to settle it in the ring. So I thought that was brilliant and way ahead of its time. And I think, again, if you look at the NWO, some of the stuff that they did outside of the arena, you're thinking the back lot area where they attacked you know, Rey Mysterio and beat up Sting with the car and everything. I think a lot of that inspiration came from this.
yeah. I mean, and I've always heard it, and nothing's new in wrestling. You just have taken what's happened before and make it your own kind of thing, even from wrestling moves. Now, I can't say that so much today with some of the stuff, the gymnastics I see, but as far as angles, I mean, look at, I mean, Nature Boy Ric Flair, I mean, Nature Boy Buddy Rock, I mean, everybody has had the same. It's just recycled to a point, and you make it your own. So, you know, yeah, that's just, yeah, again, nothing's new, and it's replicated. This worked years ago. Sometimes you know, promoters can get, or excuse me, bookers get stagnant, and I know that's what happened in the early 90s with WCW. With, you know, they relied too much on what had worked before without creating anything new, and the new they tried to create, you know, Jim Hurt in there, just, good God,
Mhm.
no, he was ever thinking, but
Mhm.
definitely. Again, it goes back to, like I said, nothing's new in the business. Basically, that's always been
Mhm.
the same.
Mhm. You have mentioned before that you were good friends with Dustin Rhodes, and I'm assuming you're around Big Dust quite a bit. Did he ever share any sage advice to you on the business that you remember?
No, he never gave any advice. The only thing that I remember, I did mention this. I think it may be our first interview, is where he stopped me behind and told me that he was going to put me with Dustin and make us we were going to start out as Agent Steel 1 and 2, because I was still doing the Agent Steel gimmick, and then like rip the masks off, and he's like, boom, there you got the, because me and Dustin already had our tag team name. We were going to be the American Wrecking Crew. And we had airbrush shirts. I mean, we were such marks. We had gone to Myrtle Beach and gotten American Wrecking Crew, like, and he even said Dusty, I guess, because he had seen Dustin, and he's like, "Oh, boom, it's Dustin Rose and Brad Anderson. We got two factions that hate each other, but they're together, the children, and we're going, you know." And then, you know, later down the road, I see Kendall Windham and Dustin, the young stat. I think one of your viewers corrected me. I think it was the Young Stallions or something like that,
The
or
Texas Broncos, I believe. Yeah,
I can't ever remember it right, but yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah.
then there's another shot, I guess, just got shit canned because, but no, he never. But he was always so busy. I mean, you know, with so many things. He's I don't, unless it was a big spot like a pay-per-view or one of your top talents. I never saw Dusty really talk to anybody about the match. I know he did, but it was the top guys in the top spots. You know, I personally never saw him like stop a mid or lower tier guy and give him and then, any advice, and then also being a lower mid-tier guy, you're scared to death of him. So that was what I just never, even though I knew him and he knew me, and I was always at his house, he'd see me and speak to me there. I never asked him like, "Hey, what'd you think of my match?" Because it was very intimidating, to be besides such a big personality,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I think having Dusty as the protagonist in that equation really made a lot of classic moments, including this one, the War Games concept, a Dusty Rhodes concept, the first, I guess, two War Games, maybe more memory serves me correctly, was Dusty and Nikita, the superpowers with the Road Warriors against the Horsemen. And man, was that ever drama and all the good stuff that happens in pro wrestling. A lot of guys in the ring at once, but there wasn't a dull moment in that match. I know you were working not in the ring, but behind the scenes, so to speak, for Crockett during in and around this period. Do you have any memories of, first of all, get your opinion on the War Games match itself, the concept, and your experiences working the bashes specifically around the War Games?
I'm going to be completely honest. The War Games part, I might have, I came in and out of some small territories. I never left because they were all closed, and I was in Alabama, Calgary, Portland. It seems like I don't honestly remember when I was away in those territories. I didn't watch I watched very little of WCW. I honestly don't remember that much about the org. Being honest, I don't mean it was a big deal. I just don't remember seeing it. I must have been either in a different territory or something. But then, of course, the bashes. And, that first year, I think they only had maybe a couple of them, 85-ish, I think might have been, or 86 was the first one. And then, of course, the next year, they kind of, I feel, oversaturated it with the bashes. But I know we had talked and we said, growing up as a kid, and I drove the golf carts, me, Dustin, and we'd get into that. But those bashes were just amazing. I remember going to Memorial Stadium, and I think it was like 25,000 people, something like that. And then, to me, I had never been in an environment like that for wrestling. But it was definitely, a turning stone. But at the same time, I think that next year they kind of oversaturated it because they were running an American Bash in every small town. And they might have made some money, but I think in the long run, they kind of hurt that name because, sorry, but Road Warrior Hawk against Flair in a world title, not something I'm buying into. That's not what I want to see. I love both. I love Hawk, but as an individual champ, I just never saw that. And they were doing, I'm sure those matches, like they were Ricky Morton by himself with Flair. Those I didn't get it why and you can see also that second tier of the bashes, the house, like Charlotte was way down from the year before. It was still a good house, but it probably was, if it was 25, it was 15,000 that next year, because it was down big time. So, that was a little bit too much of a good thing, I guess.
Mm-hmm. What do you think about this is with respect to the War Games, but also in general with WWE taking some of the intellectual property of WCW and bringing it back again? They just had a Halloween Havoc, and they've run a couple of War Games matches themselves within NXT. Does that do you find that to be I don't want to say disrespectful to the legacy that they're kind of reusing that old those old ideas, or where do you fall on them using WCW stuff now in different iterations?
I mean, I like it. It nowhere has the importance or power of that name when it was WCW. You know, I mean, I don't even know how many pay-per-views are even done a year by WWE. I mean, so it is great. It's like, hey, they are drawing in the fans from that era to, hey, I recognize that name. But there's, I mean, you know, they have the different names that they would use, and it just doesn't have the same feeling. You know, you have your fans from that day and like, oh yeah, I might tune in. But like I just said, there's so many pay-per-views. I mean, they kind of the name gets lost a bit. But it's still a nice homage to where it came from. And again, nothing's new. I mean, if it worked before, let's use this. And hey, we need an idea for Halloween pay-per-view. Halloween Havoc, it worked before. So, I think it's nice. I still, there's two sides of me though, too. I know that Hall of Fame thing with W gets me. I can't believe Dad and Ole aren't in there. But I know why, with Ole and Vince's, even though Vince is out now. But I don't know. I just always have to throw that in there when I get a chance, because as far as tag team wrestling, they were one of the prototypes of how to tag team wrestle. And it's a shame that you have some of the people you do Hall of Famers and never made an impact doing anything, So anyway, I'm sorry. I went on a side note there.
No, that's great. That brings up a sidebar kind of issue, but with the Hall of Fame, it's amazing that they're excluded. I mean, bygones be bygones. I think Ole should have been part of the Four Horsemen introduction 100%. I know perhaps you know better than I, but I know that he kind of he was upset by that, and he was nearing the end of his life, so it would have been a nice homage and to talk about Gene as well. But you think they can at least find room in the historical section to put your dad and Ole in. I think that's it probably didn't mean all that much in terms of finances, but I think it means in terms of the payoff. But I think it means a lot for just recognition of their place in history. Did you know if Ole was upset by that Hall of Fame deal?
No, I have never heard that. And I thought, sadly as it was, Ole passed, and I thought maybe now that, because they hated each other. I mean, there was a hatred that's like Cornette and Vince Russo. I mean, it wasn't as vocal as that, but I don't think Ole. That is kind of surprising to hear that he was a bit upset, because even though I agree he should have been there. He was the Four Horsemen. I mean, that should have been him on that stage. But I always heard he wouldn't do it. I mean, no, he would not do anything that would make Vince excuse me, in his language, a goddamn fucking penny. There's two sides. I believe he should, but I don't think he would have done it. So, unfortunate as it is, Ole is, not with us here anymore. Maybe, it's run differently. Maybe that'll happen one day. Not because I want to be I'd love to see my dad and Ole. A lot more people know Ole than they do my dad, because his career was shortened and he was not in the Four Horsemen, and that was such a thing. So that he does get confused a lot, but they were great and they should be honored for that.
One of the features of the Four Horsemen was the rotating membership, and that all began when Ole was kicked out of the group. I wanted to ask you the storyline reason. Maybe I've heard it's kind of a work shoot in there too. Was it his son Bryant that was wrestling at the time, and he wanted to be able to participate in going to his commitments, amateur wrestling commitments, and he couldn't be as involved full time anymore. And they decided to do the switch, get him out, and spun that off into a program that didn't really take off. I know he was teaming with Tim Horner for a bit, but didn't really have the juice that they thought it might have. It was, to your knowledge, was that kind of a where a wrestling drew from reality thing, and Ole got some heat for not making all the dates?
Yeah, yes, and again, I was everything on that part is hearsay, but it was a lot of good hearsay. I would say, very, it was good. I mean, so yeah, Bryant was at, I want to say, East Chattanooga or East Tennessee State or something wrestling. It was a senior. He was a good shooter. And I know Ole wanted to go to the shows, or not the shows, but his wrestling matches. And I guess, and always like he's seeing, his age, and it's starting to, yeah. So when he did come back, as far as I know, and my dad, that was a shoot. He wanted to see his kid wrestle. I talked to Bryant recently, actually, because I know you'd like to get us on here. That would be great, I think. Then they brought Bryant in there. Bryant was so green then. Still, it was too early, if you ask me. He didn't know how to get over. I mean, he was still learning how to wrestle in the ring. Bryant's great kid. I mean, we were friends, like best friends until we were like 8 or 9 when they moved away, maybe 10. But yeah, it definitely did not. That wasn't. I feel bad because that was not a good way. That was one that's always exit from the business, basically, for the most part. I mean, at that point, it was like so. Not good. I know he came back later with when he was Booker with the scorpion gimmick and tried to, but that was not, I was not a fan of that. But it from what I know, that was a shoot completely that Ole wanted his son wrestle, and so they turned it into an angle.
Interesting. And then Luger was brought in, and as you said, not really the elite level of worker of the Horsemen, but it made for some compelling television when Luger got on the outs with the Four Horsemen in that bunkhouse stampede. Tully and Arn and Luger were last left, and Dylan was there, and they did the high five, jumped over, and then Luger was supposed to do the same thing and have JJ win, and he ends up throwing JJ out. What I found the best of Luger's babyface run in that time frame was when he was tagging with Barry Windham, and Barry Windham against Tully and Arn, and Barry Windham turned on Luger in a really, really shocking moment, and perhaps the most highly skilled version of the Horsemen came to be. You had Barry had the U.S. belt, Tully and Arn had the tag straps, and of course Flair had the world title. Let's talk a minute about just how great Barry Windham was, and what a amazing heel he was, being the quintessential babyface, doing the 60 minutes with Flair all the time. But then he went to another level, in my opinion, when he turned heel and fit into the Horseman like no pun intended, as he's wearing it there, but a glove.
Yeah, I spoke on that earlier. When they brought in Lex, I mean, he was fresh out of Florida. He's still green. Again, if I'm talking about, I love these guys, any of them. So when I speak of their wrestling ability, I don't want it to reflect how I think of them as a person. I love Lex. He always helped me out, like even more so. I don't know, maybe it was because of respect for my dad, but he would take me places, buy me dinner. He'd like to be left alone, but he helped me. That being said, in Ole's words, in the ring, he was a shit. I remember, and I'd said it also on one of your earlier shows, Dick Murdoch used to rib when they had the 2 airplanes that Crockett owned, and they'd fly them, and all the boys would be in there. And Murdoch because they brought Lex in with some, at the time, a crazy contract. I don't remember the money value, but compared to what the other boys were getting, he automatically got heat because of what he was making and brought in. But he looked unbelievable. So who wouldn't want him as part of their thing? And but get back to the version. Dick Murdoch on the airplane would have a few beers and would say he would teach Lex how to do a headlock takeover for $150, which is like one of the first things you learn in the business, saying that he don't know shit, but you know, he was just ripping them. And then I think over time too, with that term, they realized, you know, they could only get so much out of Lex from the look. And unfortunately, I think that happened a lot in Lex's career with his gimmicks. You know, he just great guy, worked hard. It just something was missing there with the working ability for him being so athletic. So yeah, when they brought Barry in, that it seemed to be just the perfect. You know, there was no drop off much, I would say, from the original to that. I guess that would be the third version, you know, of the and God, not to mention how great of a guy Barry was. I love being.
And you know, when you look at this stage, that I think was the zenith of the Horsemen, because then I'm forgetting how Sid became a member, but he was like a fish out of water there. Then Tully and Arn, as you know, as the anecdotal history goes, they weren't offered an appropriate contract, and they went to WWF, left Rick and Barry on their own. Then it kind of fizzled out. Dylan left as well. Then you know, Tully, when they were going to come back and reform the Horsemen with those four members, flunks the drug test, and then the contract's gone, and they started these various versions. Ole came back as a Horseman. He and Arn had some good matches against the Steiner brothers, but then, you know, there were these successive versions of the Horsemen to the point where it kind of got watered down. And Arn in another interview said, you know, they only need you when they need you, and when they needed the Horsemen, they trot them out, and then you know, for example, in the NWO era, beat them every night. Looking back on this successive amount of members in the Horsemen, do you think it really hurt the faction?
Okay,
you're back.
I'm sorry, about 5 seconds there. I didn't. Okay, you were asking about the.
Do you think that the very, like, after the version with Barry Windham there, and they kept bringing them back, especially in the 90s, do you think that it hurt the faction?
I don't know if you can hear me, Jack. I'm sorry, I can't hear you right now. I don't know. I haven't done anything.
I'll bring you back in. I'll just kick you and bring you back in. So we're going to get into with Brad this phenomenon of multiple members and how that really watered down the Four Horsemen, and whether or not it was a good idea that maybe they should have stopped at a point. But as I quoted Arn Anderson, he said that whenever business was down, basically they ended up bringing them back. And consequently, not for some epic reiterations of the Four Horsemen. I think back to the debate about Jeff Jarrett being a member of the Horsemen, and that whole situation, and just the fact that the whole deal was watered down. Here he is. He's back.
Okay, I don't know what happened. It just dropped on me. I didn't touch anything, I promise.
No problem. I just wanted to get your opinion on whether or not you think that this rotating members, and especially in the 90s, they really watered down the Horsemen, and maybe they should have just let the faction be in the history books. But when business was down, Arn Anderson said they keep bringing them out again. What are your thoughts on these, especially the 90s where the NWO were just beating them from pillar to post and really disrespecting the booking at the time, didn't really treat them as the elite faction that they were.
Yeah, I agree with you totally. That's that behind the scenes stuff. I mean, I used to I think Vince did it worse even. I remember watching when they had the Monday Night Wars, and they would bring back a legend and squash them out there in the ring, and I was like, what? I mean, you leave people disgusted feeling because you know what just happened. I mean, you brought back an older guy that probably shouldn't have been in the ring, but not that the Four Horsemen weren't. But yeah, they use them to, pass the torch. It's bullshit because they still could have gotten over and not been the Four Horsemen. That should have been left alone. When you start bringing in, yes, again, Love Sid, no. Paul Roma, no. Kurt Hennig could have worked had it been near the original, Benoit near the, but did you lose? We're back. It keeps blanking out. I'm sorry.
I lost you again. I'll just kick you and bring you back.
Okay.
He's making a good point there. There was some potential there to have a strong Horseman faction, but it seemed like even when Benoit was in the group and Malenko, they were very seriously jobbed out by WCW at the time, and it would have been perhaps best for their legacy to leave them be and find some other group to feed to the NWO. I was just commenting on that was a very good point. There probably was with Benoit and Malenko, there was real potential there, but they were booked incorrectly and they were brought back to some fanfare and then squashed. So I think one of the later highlights of the Horsemen, Sting, wanted to ask you about that. Sting was a member for about a month, and they did that great angle where he was kicked out of the Horsemen and Ole knocked him out, and they did a beatdown because he wouldn't give up that title match with Flair. You recall what I'm
Yes.
talking about, no doubt. What do you think of that angle using Sting in that regard? And was that a highlight in your opinion or not?
I think if he was there a month, it was a month too long. Sting's great, but I mean, when you just start throwing, it's like throwing substitute players in as your quarterback. I mean, Sting's not. I mean, you look at Ole, Arn, Tully, Flair, the original, and then if somebody like warped you in and like, now we have Sting as you'd have been like, what the, but I mean, I know they did it to set up an angle, but it watered down the Horsemen even more, in my opinion. I mean, it was a month too long. Sometimes things just need to be let alone, and then maybe you can bring them back. But to just constantly recycle it with bodies is what it seemed to come down to. And I don't mean that bodies they're bad bodies. I mean, Sting's great, been all those guys, but they just kept plugging in somebody else, and it just kept minimizing
the impact. Of,
are you there?
The minimizing the impact of the group, and I'll get Brad's thoughts on this too. That the process there was repeated with the NWO and that faction that started off strong as a 3-man unit just was completely watered down in terms of members after members, and then NWO Black and White, Wolfpack. I think, Brad, they really.
I'm sorry. Are you there?
Yep. Can you hear me?
Okay, I can't hear you though. I don't know what's going on. I'm not touching anything. It's just
Oh,
dropping on us.
can you hear me now?
I don't have any volume.
Okay, I'll bring you back one more time. The watered down version of the NWO was absolutely not a good thing, and it was in a lot of ways history repeating itself. But interesting to hear from Brad's perspective. Being a guy that was in WCW around this time frame that they were that Sting was in there again, that it was again a situation where I guess it made sense from a storyline perspective for a month, but not really the type of talent that they needed in the group. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I hope it's. I don't know what's going on. I apologize.
That's okay. You can hear me now?
Yes, I'm sorry. I don't know what's happening.
No problem. We'll cut this out in post. In terms of the NWO, that was history repeating itself, was it not? With all you had everybody and their dog in the faction against the Horsemen, and then Black and White, and then Wolfpack. It was really history repeating itself, and it's something that a booker. I know when they're low on ideas or whatnot, it might be tempting, but it's really the kiss of death for a faction.
That's what it was. I mean, yeah, that even just when they went the red, it was like, what, and then you had the LWO and just, yeah, that, but you had the boys running the show. I mean, you had bookers who, Eric Bischoff's supposed to be, but, and then the boys were running the show, and that it just is not good. And they were constantly pushing themselves. Again, I love those guys, but that's why you always say you don't have a worker that's a booker at the same time, because it's just too tempting to push yourself. And, the demise of NWA with Dusty, I remember Arn ribbed when I first got my Anderson boots. He said, "Oh, kid, you wear those, you better line up like the Three Stooges and start taking elbows from Dusty." Because, he had them all lined. That's what he called it, the Three Stooges spot, where they'd all just sit there and Dusty would go back and forth and they'd just feed for the elbows. And, so, yeah, it was an oversaturation of something that worked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know Arn and Tully talked about that. There was some because of the power that Dusty had. There was some resentment there, especially when they were being almost cannon fodder. They would lose all the time, but then go on TV and deny it or not talk about it. Period. So it worked. But Dusty went over 99.99% of the time.
There we are.
Lost you again. We'll kick you out and bring you right back before we close down. So Dusty Rhodes, again, they're perhaps one of their, if not their greatest opponent, but also behind the scenes, an individual that really was resented in some areas, as Brad's talking about here, because of his power of the pencil.
Okay.
Power of the pencil, as they say. Brad, in terms of the legacy of the Four Horsemen, a lot of folks talk about how the NWO and DX were, responsible for, so much to come. You look at the Bloodline as the most recent successful faction, and they say, it couldn't happen without the NWO or DX, but really the Four Horsemen. Without the Four Horsemen, there wouldn't be such a spotlight in a company or feature on a faction. What do you think their historical imprint is to this day?
Well, it was a perfect. Again, I say it was a perfect storm. And then DX was a perfect storm also. Those guys were over, but it took, obviously, you could see, hey, we had this before with this group, the Horsemen, and again, I don't think they had any idea, because you see how it rode. It was Nash and Hall originally, and then they H and X-Pac came in, and you just see what's working, and
We'll see if you pop back here, Brad.
I'm sorry. I lost it again. I'm sorry. I don't know.
Okay, we'll bring you back one last time. Yeah, the as is said in wrestling, everything old, as Brad just said here, is new again. But there comes a time when you need to come up with fresh new ideas, and I think they did that with.
Okay.
I was just mentioning that I think they put a new spin on it with the bloodline, and that's rare for factions because so many factions seem to just take the Four Horsemen blueprint and run with it. Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah, I mean, I get honestly, yeah, I don't even know who's in the bloodline. I know it's a lot. It's every time I turn around, there's another Samoan in there, and I mean, I know there's a big group of them. So I don't watch.
I've lost track too.
Yeah, I don't even know. There's so many Usos and relatives and stuff. I don't know. But again, if something worked, they're going to reuse it. So I would assume that's what they're seeing in that. But I don't have much knowledge. I can't watch that. I'm confused as a viewer. So.
But I guess it's a fair statement that the Horsemen really started it all and provided so much classic moments that we still talk about today. I don't know anymore, but in theaters in audiences you used to get the four fingers up all the time. I think that was a big part of their success, and as you said, groundbreaking in terms of having fans into heels. So definitely a legacy that I think is going to continue on in the business. But Brad, this has been an interesting walk down memory lane as always. I think for our next show, want to get into some of your experiences working behind the scenes in Crockett, such as during the bash. We'll go into some detail there, and just from your perspective, what those events were like and how successful and great they really were. Do you have any closing thoughts on the Four?
Jack, I'm sorry, I can't hear you again. I don't know.
No
Can you hear me?
No problem. Yep, but I'll just go out for now. So that is the Four Horsemen, the retrospective on the Four Horsemen from the one and only Brad Anderson. We'll see if he comes back and then shut it down, technical difficulties notwithstanding. Brad, I just wanted to give any final thoughts to you on the Four Horsemen.
Jack, I don't know if you can hear me. I can't hear you. I don't know what's happening. I'm sorry, but I don't know what's going on.
No problem. We'll call it a show, and we'll be sure to keep the fans up to date as to the next topic and where we're going to drop that. But until next time, I'm Jack Kilby for Brad Anderson. We'll see you next time on Old School Family Legacy Podcast. Thank you for watching this video. Please give it a like if you enjoyed it. Be sure to follow us on all social media platforms at Cheap Heat Productions. Don't forget to hit the notification button and you won't miss any of our upcoming interviews, recurring programs, or entertainment products. Thanks.